All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks again for joining. I'm Isaac from Locofy, and this is our fourth webinar over here. And today's topic is, once again, to be generating new components for your existing repository with Locofy. So I'm going to cover what are the main points that we'll be going through today. So firstly, I'll be showing you how you can prepare your Figma design. Then afterwards, we'll be syncing to the Locofy builder, setting up our components over there. Then I'll show you how we can easily push these new components to our existing repository. And the most exciting part for today's session is the iterative development flow that we have that will allow you to continue working on your design and code at the same time without having to handle a lot of back and forth. All right, so this is the agenda for today. And at the end, we do have the Q&A. So if you do have any questions along the way, please do drop them in the question and answer box, and we'll be getting to them at the end of today's session. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so first thing I'll do is I'll show you the existing repository that we are going to be adding to, right? So this is a sample repository over here. And this is actually a maintenance page repository from Vercel, Next.js, right? So this is basically to help you to do edge maintenance, right? So I have this repository copied. You can check this out as well if you want to grab a copy of this. Now, I have opened it inside of GitHub code spaces. So this is similar to VS Code, except that it's run on the web, and it's going to be very useful for our demonstration today. So here we have the README file and a couple of, these are the files that come in the original repository, right? So I'm going to do a npm run dev and show you what our project initially looks like. Okay, great. So you can see that it's actually a very simple page. Doesn't look too great. And it covers a couple of tips and pointers about how to set up this maintenance page. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to spruce this up, right? So we want to add, for example, you have an existing repository. It might be maybe an outdated design. You want to revamp it, add new components, add new pages. And I'll show you how you can easily do that with Locofy and start to integrate Locofy bit by bit into your existing repository. Okay, so let's make this look a lot better. And let's go to our Figma, where we're going to be showing you how we can design new components. So over here in Figma is, for those, I'm sure you're all familiar, is where we can design our new components. And I'll give you a quick overview into how Locofy helps to turn these elements into code. So here we have a sample form, right? So you can see we have this set up inside of Figma. And I'm going to show you how the Locofy plugin works very quickly and how to turn this into code. So Locofy plugin, for those who are not so familiar, we help to convert designs into code. We support a few main frameworks, the most popular ones like React, Next.js. For today, we'll be using Next.js, Gatsby, React Native, and plain HTML, CSS. So once you open up the Locofy plugin, you can create a new project. We have one here called New Components. And we have the Design Optimizer. This is a new feature which we recently launched for you to basically, if you have an existing design, will help to run through it, scan through, and help to make improvements to get better code quality. So that's not the focus for today. I'm just going to be showing you briefly about how we can tag and add some functionality to this form. And then afterwards, we'll jump right into the integrating of the code. So here you can see that with Locofy, we can preview this. And right off the bat, we can see that it is pixel perfect. But some things don't actually work. For example, this button doesn't actually work as a button. And these input fields as well do not work as input fields. So I'll just very quickly tag them. So how tagging works is you can simply select the elements in Figma, choose the appropriate tag over here. In this case, it's an input. So let's go ahead and click on inputs. Once you've set up the properties, you can further customize it. You can head to styling and layouts as well. And then finally, add any actions as required. So for this input, we don't need these. I'll click on done. You can see our auto tagging AI has detected a few similar ones. I'll ignore them for now. Let's do one for the button. So now I've tagged this as button. And what we can do is we can head into styling and layouts and take care of a few things. So for example, we can add a hover effect over here. So click on hover and then simply, for example, make this a slightly darker color. And just like that, we've set up a hover effect for our button. Next, we can also make this full width on a smaller device. So for example, let's click on this and change this width to 100%. So now on devices 650 pixels or less, this button is going to be full width, right? We can add an action. In this case, we will use the form action, which you can basically add by tagging this as a form, right? So here you can add a URL action over here. So you can also tag this and turn this into a functional form. So just like that, let's have a quick preview. So you can see now that our button actually works as a button. We have a hover effect. And here you can see that we can actually type our name inside here. So for example, Isaac from Locofy. Perfect. So you can see how we managed to use tagging to turn this into functional code. Now for our components today, we are not going to generate all of the components from scratch. This is where the Locofy UI kit actually comes in very handy. So here you'll notice that we have a bunch of components which we have already pre-tagged for you. So you can grab this from our Locofy community page. We have things like forms, inputs, different types of cards, header navigations, footer, and all of this is already set up to be fully responsive, and you can also fully interactive. So you can preview this and we can see that basically all of these have been pre-tagged for you. Just like this. So hello@locofy.ai. So go ahead to make full use of these components. For today, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be grabbing 2 of these components to add into our existing repository. So what we'll be doing is we'll use this block section over here, as well as this form over here. Okay, so I've copied them over, and this is where we have them. So these are the components from the Locofy UI kit. And what you'll see is that we are going to put them together in a frame, and we are going to be exporting this frame, syncing this frame to Locofy Builder, and then turning these into individual code components. So that's what you can do. If you have a couple of components you've already created, go ahead to put them in a frame. And then now let's sync this over to the Locofy Builder. All right, so we are done syncing. Let's open this up. Great. So you can see that this is the Locofy Builder. We have our new components. They have been synced across. It's working. And let me give you a quick introduction. So in this Locofy Builder, you can see that we have the code at the bottom. So we have the TSX files over here. And in this case, we have our Tailwind configs. This is a Tailwind project, and it's a Next.js Tailwind project using TypeScript. Next, let me show you how you can easily turn these elements. So right now you can see that they are all in a single page into individual components. So for example, here, what we can do is we can select this form and then go ahead and simply click on Make Components and then give this a name, right? So here I will call it Subscribe Form. That's good. Give me a second here. Okay, great. So we'll call this Subscribe Form. And all right, so next what you will see is that we have the form over here. So we are exporting the subscribe form. And over here, what you can also do is you can click on Auto Components with Locofy.ai. So this will actually scan through your design and look for components that you might want to turn into components. So here you can see that we have identified these 3 block cards. And on top of that, we have also identified things which you might want to add as props. So for example, things like the article title, which is over here, the article reading time, which is this 3 minutes read over here. So we have also detected these props across these components. So let's go ahead and accept these 3 instances as well. All right, so we are done. Okay, so we have the card components. This has been created. Let's finally turn also this entire card row into a component. Okay, great. So we have our cards row components. Now I'm going to be showing you how we can easily integrate this into the repository that we have over here, right? So the first way that you can do so is to simply download your code. So you can export your projects and head over to the components export. What you can do is you can grab these 3 components which we have created and then download them. So here inside of the new components folder, you can see that we have the 3 components that we want, and you can easily copy them into your existing repository. Now, this is one way to manually do it, but what I'll be showing you today is one that is going to be very well integrated into your GitHub workflow. So how we can do that is by clicking over here on this button, and then what we want to do is to push to GitHub. Great. So I've already previously added my token. You can go ahead to add your token over here. You can push this to a new repository. In this case, we want to use an existing repository. And we will go ahead to select our sample repository. So that's this repository over here. Great. So what we want to do is we want to push to an existing branch. So let me just create a new branch from here. So let's call this new branch with components. Okay. So I've created that. All right. So let's head back into here. Okay, I think it needs to poll again. Let me just restart this. Okay. So here we go, new branch with components. Let's push to this new branch with components. So I'm going to click confirm. And what you see here is our new feature, which is a file manager along with a conflict resolution engine. So on the left, you can see that we have the GitHub repository. So these are all of the folders and files that we originally had. So this would be your starting repository. And over here are all of the Locofy components that comes in this project. So here you can see the legend as well for the different kinds of codes that we have to indicate, what kind of changes have been made. So in this case, for today, we don't actually want the entire project. So let's go ahead and deselect them. So to use the components, all you have to do is to grab the components folder. So here we have our cards row, and our form. Next, we would also want the public folder because we have a couple of images over there, if you remember, inside of our card. Next, we also want to grab our Tailwind config, as this is a Tailwind project. And you can see here that we have detected there could be some conflicts. So once you've selected the files that you want and the folders that you want to sync across and push into your project, let's go ahead to click Resolve Conflicts. All right, so here we are in the conflict resolution page. So let me walk you around this. Here is the files that we are going to be pushing over to GitHub. And here you can see this is the original code that we have. So this is the one on the repository. And this is the new code that is being pushed from Locofy. As you can see, there are many more styles that we have added based on your Locofy project. So there are some conflicts over here, and you can decide which one you want to keep. So in this case, we can see that ours is a subset of the original repo. Let's go ahead and just keep what we originally had. And this here is the end result, which is the combined code based on the decisions that you have made. All right, so once we're done, let's go ahead and click on Mark Resolve. Let me try to make this a little bit bigger. Okay. And then let's go ahead and complete merge to push. Right. So now what Locofy is doing is that we are actually making the push directly to your GitHub. And we're going to be seeing how we can easily add that into our existing page over here. So for this page, we have our index.tsx. Let me open that. And this is the existing code for our simple maintenance page here. So let's just give this a second to sync across. This might take a couple of minutes. Right. So I think I see a couple of, if there's any questions that you might have so far, do feel free to leave them inside the Q&A box and we can tackle some of these. So the useful thing about this GitHub integration is that now we are doing our initial push. And afterwards, what I'll be showing you is how after we have added the components in and we can make separate changes in design, separate changes in code, and then sync across again. So our project has been pushed over to GitHub. That's great. So now let's head over to our VS Code. And we are going to want to head over to our new branch. Let me fetch. Okay, let's check out our new branch, which is this one, new branch with components. And over here, let's pull. And let's see. Okay, great. So you can see now we have the components folder, which we originally didn't have. So this was pushed over here from Locofy. And then we also have our Tailwind configs. Let's just double check. Okay, great. So it has been successfully pushed from Locofy. Great. So now it's very simple. Let's go ahead and add the new components into our existing code base. So over here, let us check out our cards row. So what is it called? Cards row. So I'm going to put it inside this section here. Okay, perfect. So let's save this and run it. And there we go. You can see that now we have just introduced our new component into our existing code base. Right, and it's also fully responsive, just as how we have set it up. Perfect. So let's go ahead and add our other components in as well. So we have the form component. I believe it was called subscribe form. Okay, great. So let's go ahead again to view that. And there we go. So we have our subscribe form also added into our new repository. So it is also fully interactive, just as how we have set it up. Okay. Oops. Perfect. So now let's go ahead to see what happens when you start to add some additional logic or add some data from your APIs into your components, right? And then what to do after you want to make some additional changes to the design as well. So inside of our components, let's head to our form. So this is the subscribe form that we had created and we had was generated by Locofy. Let's add in an API call to dynamically populate this number over here. So I'm going to copy a piece of code simply to do that. All right, great. So firstly, we have our state variables. Let me import these. So firstly, we have our state variable. Then we are using a use effect and fetching some data from this placeholder endpoint, right? So this is a sample endpoint that we can use. Then we save the value into our state variable. And that's it. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and replace this number over here with our state variable. So that would be subscribers. Okay, so now we can save that. And let's check out our app again. Okay, so now it says 10, right? Which is the number that it has received from our API. All right, great. So now that we have set up our additional logic, additional data inside of our components, let's see what happens when we want to make an additional push on our design. So over here, this is our original design. Now let's make some changes to this code. Sorry, just let me give me a second here. I'm going to commit this changes to our GitHub. So let's call this added components and then click commit. And we will sync it up to our branch. All right, perfect. Now let's head back here. So let's go ahead and make some changes. So for example, after you have done the additional logic layer on top of your code and the designer wants to make an update to the design, let's go ahead and make some changes. For example, we can change the fill color here. Let's make this blue. We might want to change a couple more things like the border radius. Let's make it 20. And then maybe we also want to change the text as well. So instead of 140,000 people have signed up, we can say something like 140 people are enjoying the product. Okay. All right, there we go. So now let me show you how quick and simple this workflow is. Let's select this and go ahead to sync this to the Locofy builder. Done. So back here, let's refresh. And you can see that our changes have been pushed across. The hover effect is still the orange one. Do remember that you can set up the hover effects in the plugin as well. And now let's go ahead to click on export and push to GitHub. So once again, we are going to push to our existing repository into the branch that we had created just now. And let's push it. So now Locofy is once again scanning through the repository that we have. You can see now that we have the components over here. And then this is the Locofy side. So once again, we want to just grab the components and the Tailwind config as we had changed some of the stylings. So you can see right now that we are requested to resolve some conflicts here. All right. So you can see that for most of the other changes, we have automatically resolved them, such as the styling changes. There's just one change over here to the exact line itself. So what we can go ahead and do is to accept both changes here, and then simply resolve this. And that's it. So let's go ahead to mark this as resolved. And now we have successfully merged the code. So let's go ahead and complete this push and push this to GitHub. So what you'll notice over there is that we are using a smart conflict resolution. What we detected is that you did not make any changes on GitHub to the styling. So we are basically accepting the new changes that have been made on Locofy. So we basically understand that the new changes on Locofy are the ones that you want to keep. Then when there are some changes that are made on both the GitHub side and the Locofy side, for example, that line of text over there, then we basically raise that conflict to you so that you can easily resolve it. So this is how the code conflict resolution works. And you only have to basically resolve all of the places where we are not able to do so automatically. So that's done. That has been pushed up to GitHub. So let's head over back to our code spaces. All right, so let's make a pull. Okay, so we have successfully pulled that. You can see here that now this is the new code that we had pushed over here from our design. And let's go ahead to check it out. It is already running, and there we go. So you can see how it is so easy to continue making changes to your design and push them over to your GitHub project, just like this. Right, so that is the main feature that we wanted to share with you today, where you can basically slowly adopt Locofy into your existing project. You can start off with a few components and then add on your logic to them and slowly work your way to adding more and more components into your existing repository.